Hello, 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 and welcome to the Healing Half. My name is Miki Spear. I am a musician, author, and host of tonight's show. When I was 13 years old, my mom passed away from cancer, and I spent the better part of a decade keeping busy, pretending I was fine, and trying to convince everybody else that I was fine too. However, if you know anything about grief, you know that doesn't work out super well. So, around 10 years after she passed away, is when I really began to feel all aspects of my life start to crumble. And I realized I had to embrace this grief and I had to start working through it. So, after lots of counseling and reading and interviews, I decided to do my own show. That was a quick 30-minute refreshing burst each week where we get to talk about ways to heal our own wounds, which can be grief related and other things though too, as well as learn how can we help others in situations we don't quite understand. And tonight, I am so excited to show you my amazing friend and mentor, David George Brooke, who is that gratitude guy who is going to give us an amazing, amazing lesson all about gratitude. I can't wait for that. But before we do, I got a couple things to share with you guys. First and foremost, if you're here, I would love for you to say hi in the comments. David and I can see you guys. It's so good to see all of you who are here. And if you are watching it as a replay, please still comment as if you're watching it live because I go back through each week and look at all the comments. And I really do appreciate you guys being here and commenting throughout the show. Second thing is if you like the show and you feel like this resonates with you, feel free to share it or send it off to a friend. We just really want to get the positive message out. And again, it's such a quick show. Hopefully it can just bless somebody you care about's week in just a little 30-minute segment. And last, but certainly not least, if you haven't headed to my website yet, it's mikispear.com. And I'm not sure where the comments are for you based off of where you're watching it from, but I did put that in the comment section and it's mikispear.com. You can just click on that after the show and make sure you are signed up for my weekly resource email, WRE. In it, you're not only going to get the replay of the show, the 3 highlighted points, as well as all of David's contact information. Not only that, but we've got other goodies in there too that I can't wait to share with you. And all of that can be found on mikispear.com. One of the goodies is that Brain Peace Workbook, with whom I created with David George Brooke on the show. So don't forget that that is part of you being on my weekly resource email. And we are so excited to be able to offer that to you. Now, the last thing that I have to share with you before we bring our amazing guest on is I've had a new project. So let me ask you this question. I just want to hear like a yes or a no in the comment section. Have you ever been in a situation where you wanted to buy somebody a card, but there wasn't a card that really said what you wanted at the store? Or perhaps it wasn't that it just didn't say what you wanted it to, but rather it wasn't even remotely close to the topic you were wanting it to be on. I'm curious to see if that's happened to you. I know that's happened to me before, where I've kind of walked around the store. I'm like, nothing's saying what I want to say. Well, long story short, with Mother's Day coming up, I kind of was thinking about that a lot. And I was like, you know what? When I'm in the store, there aren't cards for people who don't really have moms on Mother's Day, which I understand that's not the point of the holiday. But what if somebody recently lost a mom and you wanted to send them a card on Mother's Day, letting them know that you haven't forgotten about them and that, you are aware that this Mother's Day might not be as easy as the other ones. Or perhaps you don't want to assume anything and you just want to say, I'm thinking of you today. Well, I started a new store on Zazzle. It's called, it's just the Miki Spear store on Zazzle. There's nothing too crazy about it, but I put the link in the comment. In the comment section. And this is just the front of one of the cards that I designed. And they're all about motherless Mother's Day cards. So if you know anybody who's lost a mom, whether it was recently or not, I have about 5 to 6 different versions of a card. That one is a simple little note, just like this one that says, this is just a little note from me to say. And on the inside, it's, I'm thinking of you this Mother's Day. It's simple, it's non-assuming, but it cuts to the point, right? But I've got other ones that are kind of more poetic, some that are more, I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm thinking of you. Just go check it out. I'll talk more about that in a couple of as we lead up to Mother's Day. But Zazzle, the website that it's on, always has fantastic deals. So if you want to buy one tonight, I was on their website earlier and they've got this code Tuesday Gifts with a Z that you can get 10%, 10 to 15% off. So if you are interested, please head there. Feel free to share the link with your friends. Again, sometimes the best thing we can do is just let people know that we're thinking of them and that we're with them. And I was hoping to kind of create a card that did that. So that's my Zazzle account. I'll share more of that in my weekly resource email. So make sure you are on that list at mikispear.com. So gratitude. It's something we've talked about before, but it's one of those topics that just keeps coming back up because we need to keep doing it. And we need to keep learning about gratitude and its importance and getting recentered on the value of gratitude. It's similar to working out, right? In the sense that, like, sure, you can work out once, but really you need to be reminded to work out often and do it often in order for you to see like a real impact. So without further ado, let's welcome that gratitude guy, David George Brooke. Thank you so much for being on the show, David.
Hi, Miki. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm just delighted to be here. Just trying to get just half the energy that you have.
I get that a lot, actually, believe it or not. So you're from the Pacific Coast. I'm in Albuquerque, but I'm from Minnesota. Do you mind telling the crowd, how did we meet? How did Miki Spear and David George Brooke meet?
I'm from the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, to be exact. And it was interesting that a gentleman that I met some years ago when he and I were in a sort of a networking group, if you will. And the networking group just wasn't going the direction that we wanted to do. We just felt it was off on personal stuff and really wasn't accomplishing much, but we decided we were going to be friends. And so then as he and I got to be friends, and then we started having coffee. And then of course, post-pandemic, we went on Zoom, and he knew your father. And he says, I think there's somebody that you should meet, which I always think is interesting because in a sense, it's like recommending a good restaurant or a good movie. And if the movie or the restaurant isn't very good, you go, listen, don't give me any recommendations again, will you? And so I said, so who's this Miki? So again, you and I met and followed up and they hit it off and done a book together, and just, it's so much of it to me is about energy. And when you think back on some of the losses that you and I have felt and dealt with, and energy is one of those things that can counteract a lot of that too. So it's just fun when you meet somebody who kind of, mirrors your energy, if you will. And it's just like a great tennis match going back and forth.
Oh, the feeling is mutual, David. The feeling is absolutely mutual. But you mentioned loss. And I know on this show, we don't only talk about loss, we talk about a lot of different things. But that said, I lost my mom. I've lost a lot of other people. Do you mind kind of sharing with the people watching either live or as a replay who you've lost in the past?
Sure. And gratitude ultimately became my coping mechanism. But way back when I was growing up, I lost both my parents relatively early in my 20s, and they had gotten divorced, and my mom had died of cancer, and then my dad took his own life. And then later I got married, and about 8 or 9 years after that, my wife passed away and left me with 2 small children. So a number of friends had died in Vietnam. That was kind of my era back there at the University of Washington, and some other friends in car accidents and things. And so along the way, I thought, I am going to have to figure out something that's going to help me, because it's just too difficult to deal with some of these losses and not making sense of them, if you will. My wife, for instance, died of a prescription pill overdose. And that's been just a horrible scourge on our country, is people that deal with overdosing on medications and drugs and prescription medication and so forth. So along the way, I found gratitude, and at least to me, it sort of all came together because I wanted to be a speaker when I was 19 years old. That was just something I wanted to do. And I didn't start until 62, like 9 years ago. But along the way, I never knew what my subject was going to be that I was going to speak about. And when I was talking to a good friend that said, you're just not, frankly, you're not doing that well. You haven't really handled a lot of your losses very well. Have you ever thought about a gratitude journal? And that's how it kind of got me started on this path, going down towards not only gratitude, but a gratitude journal and writing it every single day. And I was so unaware of it. I said, what's a gratitude journal? And he says, it's a journal you write in every day that you talk about what you're grateful for. And it really, really helps you. So I started out and bought one on Amazon and started writing, and it really, really made a difference. And then eventually I did my own gratitude journal, the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal. And I know Miki has one too. Thank you. And it just takes 5 minutes a day. And the writing portion is so important. There's a little saying in the upper, it's hard to see on the camera, but in the upper left-hand corner of the book that says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. And it's so important to actually take a pen and on the paper. And I'm so grateful to Miki Spear for inviting me to the live chat and so forth. And it just implants it. So it ended up being the healthiest coping mechanism I can imagine. And really, I try not to get overly dramatic. I tell people in my talks when I do keynotes and workshops and things, it can change your life. It can transform your life. It can save your life. I truly believe it saved my life because I kept focusing on what I have. And one of my main comments that I make is that gratitude helps you focus on what you have, and you doesn't worry about what you don't have. And one of my classic sayings that I found somewhere was, gratitude turns what you have into enough. And we're such a society of constantly keeping up with the Joneses, and somebody has a better wife, better husband, better car, better house, better beach place. Oh my goodness, it's like a cat chasing its tail. You're never going to catch that tail. So gratitude really helps you focus on what you have. And that mindset, whether it's going through the grief and the loss of people that are close to us, or any of the other challenges in life, because life is like a roller coaster. I've never met anybody that's all up or all down. It's just this big roller coaster. And when it's down, it's terrible, and you need something to help you. And then when it's up, you're really happy, and you're excited, but it's really back when you're down is when you learn all the lessons. And so gratitude has just turned out to be that great teacher for me, and just a great sort of power assist to deal with all this stuff I've dealt with.
Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing. I'm so sorry for all of your losses.
Oh, thank you, Miki.
But I'm so glad that you are turning your pain and all your wisdom. And like you said, you speak all over the country about this. So we're just so honored to have you on the show to be able to share. And you talked just now about gratitude magnifies it in a sense what you have, and turning what you have into enough. Can you talk a little bit about how, when we're going through tough chapters, be it COVID, grief, why is that mindset shift so important? Like, why if somebody asked you, like, what's the big deal? Why do I need to do this?
Well, great question. And nobody needs to do anything. In fact, I tell people, I never start a sentence with you should, you have to, you need to, or you gotta. Because when people do start those sentences with that, oh, I see, okay, you should do this, you need to do that. But I'll ask them to consider. Consider is a great word. It takes it away from, here's what you need to do. But I think that, again, it's a way to cope, because I think gratitude, like happiness and so many other things, are a choice. And every day we get out of bed, and I always picture somebody's bed in the center of a bedroom. You get out on the left side, you get out on the right side. You make a choice every day. Are you going to be positive? Are you going to be negative? And people challenge me all the time. Well, what is there to be? You mentioned, Miki, COVID and so forth. What is there to be positive about COVID? What about this? And people are dying, and there's all these things that are happening. And it's true. There's a lot of tragedy in this world. I mean, the ultimate tragedy is we're all born, we all die, where we're going to leave behind. And so we have to, so what do we do between that birth date and that death date? And that's called our life, or as people say, the dash on the tombstone is our life. And so it's just a choice you make. And I would submit to people that you can decide every day if you want to be happy or sad, or you want to focus on the good things. But even in COVID, it's been terrible. Over 500,000 people. and have died and all these things throughout the entire world. The whole world has been in this together. But there have been so many silver linings to the COVID thing if you look at it from that standpoint. And I look at all these kids that stayed home from school. And yes, that wasn't easy to be home from school, but look at that family time they're going to never forget that they got to spend together in 2020. I think about the ability of Zoom, which I use all the time for my talks. And I would speak about a gentleman that did videos for me, and I would drive an hour to meet him at Starbucks and spend an hour with him and then drive back. Now we meet on Zoom for an hour. I've got 2 more hours I didn't have, that I'm not driving, so I can get all this productivity done. I haven't been in the grocery store in 8 or 9 months. It's just, oh, there's Amazon Fresh. There's my stuff I don't have to walk at the park. I have to walk in there. I have to deal with that. And so there's so many benefits. And I think maybe one of the biggest things that gratitude does, whether it's through a pandemic or anything else, is it makes you realign your priorities. You really find out what's important. And I know that there's people that they can get a broken nail after coming from the nail salon and think they need to go to the psychiatrist. They're so upset. But it really makes you understand what's really important. And when it comes down to our health, our family, our friends, the connections that we have in the community, those are the things that are really important. And coronavirus, COVID-19 really kind of reinforced that and made us look that way. And again, it is a choice. And I'm always fascinated. People will come up to me and they'll start a sentence with, "You don't understand." And I go, no. Don't start a sentence with "you don't understand." Because you know why? Because I know what's coming next. An excuse is coming. See, you don't understand because, I live in Seattle. It rains a lot. So we can't be grateful because we don't get to see the sun as much. I mean, you can make up whatever you want, but it happens to be sunny right now in Seattle. It's exciting. Must be because I'm on the show. So it is a choice. And I really tell people, whether it's the gratitude journal or a mindset, it is a choice that you get to make. And we all know people, hopefully none of the people on the call, we all know people that are negative. And in the long run, it's just not healthy for you to be around those people, because consciously or subconsciously, they want to bring you down to their level because they want to play at the level that they're at, which is not good. And when you're an outgoing person like I am, or certainly like you are, Miki, you want to play with the better tennis player. You want to have that person that keeps you energized. And so, but I emphasize so much about the aspect of being a choice. You can be a negative person on Tuesday, wake up on Wednesday and decide, you know what, I'm going a whole different route. It's just that easy to do, and just that change of mindset. But it's just such a mentally and emotionally better way to live.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's one of those things where you're like, yes, it's a choice. But man, is it tough to follow through, especially if you're
Sure.
kind of used to that habit of sinking down, like you kind of mentioned, because misery loves company. Um,
Exactly.
and so to that point, how do we straddle the line? Last thing, I loved that no negative people thing. That's part of our brain piece. So quick reminder, if you're watching the call, don't forget, Dave and I created brain piece. One of those components of the acronym was cutting out toxic negative people. So
Exactly.
now I'm back. How do we straddle that line of feeling our emotions? And some of those are hard, like grief or job loss, which it has grief in it, but also not being blindly positive, where it's like, it's all going to be okay. So can you kind of walk us through, how do you be in a tough chapter and be in those hard emotions and have gratitude at the same time?
I think a lot of it is a timing issue. It's kind of like when somebody breaks a leg or something, the last thing they're going to be thinking about is they're going to run a race next week or something. The first thing, you got to get to the hospital, you got to get the leg in the cast, you got to wrap it up. You're going to have to be on that cast for a month or two, and then you're going to take the cast off, and then you're going to just maybe walk a little bit, and then you're going to maybe start back to jog. So it's kind of a timing thing. So to me, it's such a good point, because I can see why some people say, well, there's so much negative. Why are you just blindly going around with a smile on your face? No. Life is again, it is a roller coaster ride, but we have to acknowledge those emotions but we know that we don't want to stay there forever. We acknowledge them and say, I'm going to use gratitude in this gratitude journal to help me through this tough time. But it's so important to know that it's part of that, sort of up and down thing, as I've mentioned a couple of times. I was thinking about, one day I use this in the daily gratitude journal I have, where you do a daily number. And the daily number is 1 to 10. 10 is the best day of your life, and 1 is the worst day of your life, or one of the worst. And I woke up one day and I was a 2. I mean, I was so depressed. I don't care if I'm the gratitude guy. I was so depressed. I couldn't see what the point of anything was. And I started focusing on all this negative energy and how can this be me? But I thought, well, you better practice what you preach. So I grabbed the gratitude journal, went down to a Starbucks, got my latte, wrote in the gratitude journal. It takes 5 minutes. And I noticed that bumped me up to about a 4 or a 5. So I was better, but I still wasn't the normal 9 or 10 that I usually am. So then I drove out and did about 100 miles north of Seattle and did a talk. And this person comes up to me afterwards, says, you changed my life. And
Oh.
she says, I want to buy 2 gratitude journals for my sons, and I want to buy one for myself, and gives me a hug and all this. And so it was really rewarding. A bunch of people are lined up at the table for selling my books. And I went out in my car to go back home to Seattle. I realized it was a 9.5. And I thought, how interesting. I woke up as a 2, wrote in the gratitude journal, took me to a 4 or 5, changed somebody's life, took me to a 9 or 10, didn't have a drink, didn't smoke some weed or whatever people do, or snort some powder or whatever. So it really is, you recognize that people are going to have ups and downs. Acknowledge it, say you're sorry, give them a hug, whatever it might be. It reminds me of another time after it was on a Zoom call. I don't get a lot of questions at the end, but somebody asked a question. They said, I have a question for you. We had all these wildfires last summer. And they said, my friend lost his house and everything. Just, it was all he got was his wife and his 2 kids and him. What do you say to him? What do you say to him that's positive? And I thought, and I said, I didn't even have to think about it. I said, well, here's the thing. That's very sad. And somebody could say, well, at least he has his wife and he has his children. But sometimes people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear it could have been worse. You could have, all you can do in a case like that is just listen. Just listen. Do not judge. Do not say, well, you need to get a gratitude journal. Just listen. And then when the person has talked and talked and talked and just let these feelings out from losing their house to the fire or whatever, when they've talked and you think they're going to stop, you know what you say? Tell me more. And they'll talk some more and tell you, and just let them talk. And then sometimes if they get stalled again, say, and then what? Those are 2 good 3-word terms that are great, because when people will talk, they'll eventually get to the point where they say, you know what? Thank you. I feel so much better. And that's why Freud and some of the terms that came up, that's a load off my mind, that's a weight off my chest, all those things. Sometimes you just want to get out there. So sometimes you don't preach and you don't talk about gratitude. You just listen and let the person vent, and being an engaged listener and really paying attention. And gosh, I'm sorry to hear that. And things like that might be that all that somebody needs, but there's no question that there's the ups and downs, and the downs are tough. But we do have that choice to go through and say, I'll get through this down and I'll be up again. So it's hard, but it isn't, you're right. You make a good point. You don't just walk around with a smile on your face. You recognize and acknowledge what's out there, but certainly take advantage of it when it's good and when it's bad. I've told people many times, sometimes you do whatever you can to get through that day. And if it's not working, you got one goal, get to tomorrow. And tomorrow may be better. And if it's not, same goal, get to the next day. At one of those days in the next 2 or 3 is going to be better and you'll be fine. So, but gratitude's kind of a power assist that really helps with that.
I love that term, power assist, where it's not a cure-all. And
Right.
I loved your point too. It's not this Band-Aid, it's not either or. It's not fake, it's not false optimism or anything like that. Like you said, walking up to somebody and saying like, at least you have your wife and kids. It's like, well,
Right.
that's diminishing my everything I just lost. Like, no, thank you.
Exactly.
So it's almost, as you were talking, this idea just kind of hit me where it's like I can be in grief and I can feel those emotions and I can be genuinely sad that I don't have my mom, all those things. And the gratitude can be real. And I can also have real, deeply rooted gratefulness. Like you said, it's not going to solve everything. It's not going to bring me up to a 10 in a second, but it's definitely going to help me not stay at that 1 or 2 and bring me up. So I love that power assist. It's just going to shift you.
Well, and I think something else too, Miki, knowing your history and what you've gone through as far as loss and that I have, I've really given grace to people that don't know what to say. And so I kind of actually have an empathy for them too, because I remember at Dana, my wife, she was 38. I was holding my 4-year-old son, Connor. Somebody came up to me at the service and they said, we know what you're going through. We once lost a puppy. And I just went, oh, I mean, even in my state of grief, I thought, what kind of comment was that? But people don't know what to say. So it's not like we're here to counsel people, but I just remind people, just say, I'm sorry. I'd love to give you a hug. And don't say if there's anything I can do for you, because everybody says that. And I go, yeah, you can bring my wife back, by the way, but thanks.
Oh,
So, but I mean, it's a nice thought, but it's just, just be there for the person. And I mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to mention it again. If you just listen, that's one of the most powerful things. We live in a world where people don't even listen for what. It's just terrible. You and I were talking about on the podcast, and if you listen, you can tell if somebody's really listening if they can't ask the next question unless they heard what you said, like you just did. You said, well, that made me think about when you said that about your mom. That's how you can tell. So in a case like that, say you're sorry, give them a hug, and just let them talk and just listen, and don't judge or don't make any comments about that. Like you said, like, can you imagine well, you still have your dad, Miki. I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, and so it taught me an awful lot on how to react to people, because we're all going to lose people, but it taught me an awful lot how to be a friend to that person when I'm going to those services or talking to them after people have passed away.
Oh, and I love that. And I'll just ask a kind of a quick clarification question. So let's say, on the show, one of our goals is we want to help ourselves. So we buy David George Brooke gratitude journal. We're doing it. We're loving it. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is changing my life. I'm so happy. But then we've got that friend, like you said, house just burned down. When is the appropriate time to share, or how would one share that this gratitude's really helped me? Maybe you should consider, like you said, don't say should, or have you considered gratitude? Like, how do you transition to sharing your joy through gratitude with a friend without, like you said, going the other direction and diminishing it?
I mentioned timing earlier, and everybody's timing is different. I heard somebody once say it takes as long as it takes. It might take Miki 2 months. It might take David 6 months, but we don't know. And we just have to be there to support that person. And hopefully, I think the thing that has always been my best answer to that kind of question, because we don't know when somebody's going to be able to accept this. They may be at a much slower pace of mourning the loss of somebody that's close to them than we might be, or whatever. But I learned it's the same thing I felt about raising children and managing large employee groups like I did at Nordstrom and Lowe's, where there was 500 or 600 employees. You have to set a great example. To be a good parent, you have to set a great example. To be a good manager of a lot of people, you have to set a good example. So I think this is the same. If you're modeling the behavior and just saying, well, I'm going to go write in my gratitude journal, it's interesting to me. People make me laugh because how much are they paying attention during my talks and things? And I talk about the gratitude journal, and on an hour talk, I probably spend 10 or 15 minutes on the gratitude journal. I'm going to sell them one day at the book table, and this gentleman says, "Is this your own?" And I said, "Yeah, you can see I wrote in it, because can I look at it?" And I said, "Well, don't look at it too closely, but you can look at it." So he kind of thumbs through it, and he goes, "Man, you write in this every day." I said, "Were you listening to the talk? Did you hear what I did? Did you hear the last hour?" No, I just write in it occasionally because I only want to feel good occasionally. It makes you feel better. Who wouldn't want to write in it every day if it makes you feel better? So that modeling the behavior and setting the good example is really helpful. And then they will come to you and they'll say, "Miki, tell me more about that gratitude journal." Now, do you think maybe I should try that? As long as it's that way, they're going to have a much more of a chance of them putting in their life than they will if we're just saying you need to or you should type of thing.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, sorry he wasn't paying attention. That's a quick
Yeah.
quick tell there.
Yeah.
And as we kind of wrap up our last couple minutes together, do you mind telling us a little bit more about this gratitude journal? I'll make sure everybody has the link. Oh, you already saw.
Sure.
I've got my writings in there too.
Sure.
And just the power of it, and why a journal versus just thinking grateful thoughts.
Well, another good question. And I will say that they have proven it over and over again as I take out, for those that are on video versus audio, as you take out the pen. I am so grateful to Miki Spear for inviting me to the live event. It plants it in your brain better. It's been proven. And that's why if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. If you write about it, it empowers you. And then there's so many advantages to it. You can go back and see what you wrote. When's the last time we did our Zoom? Let me go back and see. And And then what was the highlight of my day was talking to Miki Spear and Miss Energy, and so on. And you could see, then you can save them. They last about 3 or 4 months. It is the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal, as opposed to that Gratitude Guide. That was my nickname in college. And you can get them on Amazon. They're $15. They last about 3 or 4 months, but it's so powerful, and having that ability to write. And they said that when you type, it's good. And that's why I say, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But that writing, whether it's typing on the laptop or the computer or actually writing in the book, there's something about planting it on the brain. And if you're going to go to all this trouble to be grateful, you want it to stay in your brain. And there's a lot of scientific evidence about in the prefrontal cortex, where the subconscious mind is, how it plants it, and it can't necessarily tell what's really happened and what it thinks is going to happen. Well, you want that planted in there as best you can, and writing it'll do that. So, and then I tell people, I've timed it in, 1,000,000 times. 5 minutes is all it takes. And people will ask me, in fact, that's a good segue, as I know we're close to wrapping up, is they say, well, if I took away one thing from your talk, or what would be, if you can only say one thing, I'd say, you know what, try it for a week. If you can't write in it 5 minutes a day, write one sentence, maybe a couple of sentences, what you're grateful for. If you can't even do that, write just a couple of words every day. I'm grateful for Miki. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my friends, my sons. Try it for a week and see what happens after 7 days. I've had many people get back to me and go, you know what, you were right. After 7 days, I could see and feel the difference. So I just tell people, just give it a shot. It's such a healthy coping mechanism in a world of a lot of unhealthy ones.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I am so grateful for you, your friendship, your mentorship. We are so blessed by you. For everybody, if you're watching, give David a big thank you in our comments. And also, while you're in the comments, check out, I put his link, his email, all his stuff that he gave me. And if you're on my weekly resource email, there'll be even more, because then I'll have his Twitter, his YouTube, all that stuff. But for now, I've got his website and his email and cell phone too. So thank you so much, David. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was great.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. Well, you guys, that wraps up our show for the night. We are so grateful for David. And I can just tell you, I've been doing this ever since him and I met. I try to do it every day. And it's funny, I'll kind of read you just a couple things where I kind of woke up and I was feeling like a 7. And I was kind of doubting, is this music thing ever going to take off? Which, by the way, I've got a new song coming out in 2 weeks, so stay tuned. And I was just kind of feeling bad about my body and like all these things that I think we all can deal with at times. And I went through and I was like, okay, do the journal. Do the journal. David said to do it, even when you're not doing it, especially when you're not feeling it, is when we should do it. And I came up with, I'm grateful for my warm bed, for my dog and the cats. And once you start to slow your breathing down and really feel that gratefulness, then I went to, I'm grateful I got to sleep until 7:45 today. Not everybody gets to do that. I'm grateful for my music, my show, my wonderful fans who tune in. And then all of a sudden, by the end, just like he was saying, I wouldn't say I got up to a 10, but I definitely felt better. And it just opened my eyes to the blessings around me. That warm bed. Nobody's forcing me to have a bed, right? That's a gift. That is a blessing. And I am absolutely grateful for that bed. But if I didn't take the time to center, I probably wouldn't have come up with a warm bed, right? And I probably wouldn't have appreciated it. So then you get to walk through the day with appreciation. And that's just kind of my prayer for all of you guys is, again, it's not to dismiss the pain that people feel. That's not the point. It's amidst the pain to still realize you are still loved, you are still blessed, and to walk with that confidence as you walk down those hard paths. So if you like the show, please don't forget to like it or share it. And in the comments, I did put my Heart Still Remembers link, as well as my Google review. So if you like the show and you want to review it on Google, please, if you feel like it's a 5-star show, I'd love to hear it. And that just helps Google share my information a little bit better. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm so grateful. Truly, I am so grateful for each and every one of you. My prayer is that this week, as we go into Easter, for those of us who are of the Christian faith, that's a huge gratefulness thing too, right? The fact that we get to celebrate that. So it's just a great week to be a grateful person. So thank you all so much for being here. Thinking of all of you. I know not everybody's having a great week. A lot of people are experiencing loss right now. You're not alone. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you guys next week.